We're starting a new series together called Be. And as we start this new series, really what we are examining, what we're looking at is what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? If you and I were to go have a cup of coffee, we were going to go sit down maybe at Mothership Coffee and talk about, and we're just going to catch up. I was going to get to know who you are. We've never had a conversation. Think about some of the first things that we would talk about, right? I would sit down with Daniel and I would ask him some questions about his life. Would sit down with Mark and we might start talking about what he does. And a lot of times what ends up happening in those conversations is it's less about who we are and it's more about what we do, right? This is the job that I do. These are the hobbies that I enjoy. These are the things that I do. This is what my work week looks like. This is what my schedule is like, right? Maybe here's some things that I achieved in my life. It's a lot more times, it's easier to fill our conversations with what we do rather than who we are, because who we are is much more intimate and involved than what we do. Right? What we do is easy to quantify. It's easy to qualify. It's easy to put into a certain box. This is what I've accomplished. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what I do every single week. But the difference in what we do and who we are would be, well, this is the job that I do, but I am a father. I am a husband. You see, you shift from activity to identity. And here's what we need to understand is that in the kingdom of God, being is always greater than doing. In the kingdom of God, in the grand scheme of following Jesus, being is greater than doing. Does this mean that we don't do great things? No, it certainly doesn't. Does it mean that we don't have great efforts? No, it certainly doesn't. Does it mean that we don't put things on our calendar? That's not what I'm saying. But what I am acknowledging this morning is that we have a tension in our life and a tendency in our life to identify ourselves with our activity, with what we do, with what we accomplish. And is that really what following Jesus, what being a disciple is all about? Is it really all about what we accomplish? Or is it about who we are? And do we want to accomplish great things? Of course we do. But how do we become the person that God intended us to be? See, as a church, who are we? Who do we want to be? We'll talk about this a little bit later today, but a sneak peek of that, and this won't surprise you, but we are a church where people can belong before they believe. We are a people. We are a place, we are a body, a group of people where people can belong before they believe. That may be part of your testimony. That may be why you're here. You may be here because you're like, man, I just feel like I belong here even before I even said I believe this stuff. Like I just feel like this is a place where I have affinity, belonging, where I am known, and we are committed to being a church. Now, here's the difference of being and doing. There are a lot of things that are expected for a church to do. But if this is who we are as a church, if this is who we are, this is who we be. If this is who we be, then it informs what we do. Who you are informs what you do and how you do it. And our world moves at such a fast pace. We move at such a fast pace. I was talking with Kristen the other night. We were on a date night, and we had let our date night rhythm really slip up on us. We had just stopped. We had stopped putting it on the calendar. We had stopped organizing what we needed to organize, and we're like, okay, let's get back in the rhythm. And so we go on our date night, and I was like, man, I just feel like we moved to Las Vegas, and just like things just happened. Like we just were moving fast, and it's like, and I just feel Jesus just slowing us down, me personally and us collectively, slowing us down to a place where he's like, who are you? Before you add one more thing to the calendar, before you add one more agenda, one more goal, pursuit in your life personally and our life collectively as a church. Is who you are informing what you do? Or is what you do just shaping who you are? Is the way that you're spending your time really who God has made you to be? Is the way that you're investing your resources really what God has pricked your heart to care about? Is the way that you're investing your relational energy and bandwidth really what you want to matter when you look back on your life at the end? Is it representative of who you are? And we are a church that's committed to being a church where people can belong before they believe. But belonging is tricky, right? I want to talk about who we are as a church and maybe who we are just individually. I think this word belonging is going to have a word for both of us today, whether you feel this collectively as a church body or maybe this is just for you personally or a little bit of both. Belonging is a tricky word. Anybody ever walked into a room where you felt like you didn't belong? Hopefully you're not like 5 minutes ago. Like you walked into a place where you felt like you didn't belong. Like every time I've ever joined like one of the gyms that's like $10.99 at the beginning of the year a month, like every time I've ever done that, I walk into that gym and I feel like I don't belong, right? It's like I walk into the gym and it's like everybody's on their things and I'm like, do you own that treadmill? Like, because you're looking at me like I'm in your living room. Like, why are you so mad at me? Right? Like you're trying to get to the bench press and it's like one guy walks in and he like looks at you, he's like, like you're like, whoa, bro, like I think that we all paid like a collective 37 cents a month for this bench press, okay? So like chill out. Like right? Those high volume gyms tend to have that that type of vibe, that type of feeling. Like maybe you've walked into a restaurant or a gathering or an event that you were invited to, and you realize there was insider language that you didn't know, right? Like people are speaking in code, like. Or maybe it's a restaurant where like things aren't on the menu and you're like, but everybody else knows what to do but you, and you just feel out of place, right? You feel like you don't belong. If you're a teenager or a college student, you went to a new school, right? Everybody had their rhythms. Everybody was running from class to class. Everybody knew where things were. The signage is terrible. You don't know where anything is, and you're just like, where am I, right? And there's this inner feeling that you don't belong there. And here's what I would argue. Anytime you feel like you don't belong, there is inevitably a relational problem, not a positional problem. There is relational tension, not positional tension. You're not in the wrong place. You just don't feel received by those people, right? You just don't feel accepted. You've walked into the gym and these people are barking at you with their eyes and they don't want you in their space, right? You've walked into a new school and people are close-circled in their friendship. You've walked into a new place of work and you feel like everybody's against you from day one. It's not that you're in the wrong place. It's a relational issue. It's a relational tension. There's something in us that drives our decision making that is innately relational. It is. And this is something that we have to, the reason why I'm spending time getting us into this place is because as Americans, we make individualistic decisions. We are informed as individuals. We are motivated as individuals, as capitalists, as free market enterprise people. We are motivated as individuals, but when we read the scriptures, we are called as a collective body. So our decision making, our kingdom framework decision making, when we follow Jesus, changes. And this is not some like crazy sideways agenda, okay? This is me taking us into the scriptures and letting us understand that we are trained to make decisions individualistically. But what we need to understand is that the reason that we have a hard time figuring out who we are is because we don't know how to operate collectively as disciples of Jesus. And we jump into the narrative of Jesus calling his very first disciples that we started last week. we can see that Jesus does not just call individual disciples. He doesn't. What we are mesmerized by is Jesus walking by the disciples, looking at some fishermen and say, "Follow me," and then they come after him, and then they're like, and we just have this theme song. If we've been following Jesus, you've been in church for a while, you know the song that though none go with me, still I will follow. I talked about that last week, and you're like, oh yeah, like if Jesus looked at me and picked me out from a crowd, I'd say, though none go with me, still I will follow. And I'm going to go like he says, follow me. Well, that's actually not, if you jump into the context, that's actually not really what's taking place. What happened first, what we looked at last week, is Jesus is walking by a community of disciples with John the Baptist. Those two disciples are informed by John, hey, this is the Messiah. Those two disciples together start following in the wake in their pocket of community. Jesus turns around and looks at both of them together. And he's like, what are you seeking? Right? They link up with Jesus, and here's what happens. And then the discipleship snowball starts to take place in the life and the ministry of Jesus. Verse 43 of John chapter 1, where we're going to be today. Jesus continues to call disciples, and here's what happened. The next day, Jesus has his first two disciples with him, one of which is Andrew. The other doesn't have a name yet, so we're still praying for him. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, follow me. Now, what's really interesting about this verse, you see, when we read the Bible in our English translation, what you need to understand is that we have an English translation that was translated from the original text. The Bible was written collectively in 3 different languages. There was Hebrew, there's certain smaller parts in Aramaic, and in the New Testament was written in Greek. And so when we're reading our English Bible, you have to understand that it was written originally in Greek to a first century Palestinian audience, okay? And so when we actually study this passage, it collectively, actually, there's not really much break between 43 and what happened earlier with the other disciples. And so where Jesus is positioned in this verse, and don't let me lose you here, okay? Where Jesus is positioned in this verse, and the way that the language operates actually includes Andrew in this decision. Jesus, if you look at the way the Greek text is laid out, is actually one of the last words when it comes to Jesus calling and saying, follow me to Philip. But most scholars would actually attribute that original, this is the NASB, this is another English translation, this is how the NASB translates this verse. The next day, he purposed to go into Galilee, and he found Philip, and Jesus said to him, follow me. Now, don't miss the forest through the trees here, but let me just jump into the weeds just for a little bit. The reason why the text reads this way is because it's most likely that Andrew was the one who suggested that they go to Galilee. That Andrew was most likely the one who had the relationship with Philip. And so what we see here is actually Jesus using Andrew in the calling of Philip. But make no mistake, it was still Jesus' decision and Jesus' movement. It was still Jesus' calling. But he is working in and through Andrew. And we see this continue to take place throughout the calling of the other disciples. Why is this important? It doesn't really matter who initiated it, because Jesus decided it. And when you walk with Jesus, you get to be a part of Jesus' decisions. When you walk with Jesus, you get to meet the next person that Jesus wants to save. When you walk with Jesus, you get to walk with the next couple that Jesus wants to intervene in their marriage. When you walk with Jesus, you get to walk into the next mess that he's turning into a miracle. Jesus leads us relationally to the people that he's saving. Jesus leads us relationally to the people that he's calling to be his disciples. It's not just some individual. He's not just sitting up in heaven with a salvation sniper rifle, just poking people like, okay, save. Like, that's not how he's operating. He's operating in and through his disciples, boots on the ground, spirit moving in conversations type of a way. So the next day he purposed to go into Galilee, and he found Philip, and Jesus said to Philip, follow me. Here's the first thing I want you to know about Jesus' disciples. Jesus' disciples were bringers. They were bringers. What do I mean by that? Jesus' disciples were bringers. Go ahead and write that down, because that's going to frame some of the rest of what we're talking about this morning. Jesus' disciples were bringers. Verse 44, now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Bethsaida was a small fishing town located at about the north edge of Galilee. And so as they're going into Galilee, they get to Bethsaida, which is the city of Andrew and Peter. Andrew had already helped call Peter, who was one of his family members, right? And now he's helping call Philip, so that you see this relational snowball start happening. And he's like, okay, well, let's go into my hometown. And they're walking with Jesus in their circles of influence. So like, some of us, like, maybe you give your life to Jesus, or you're starting this journey and you're not really sure where to start. Well, who do you know? Like, you're like, oh man, like there's this big mission, like people need Jesus, and like, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to reach? Like, how is he going to use me? Do you know anybody? Do you have any family? Do you have any relationships? Like, who do you know? Who's he put in your circles already? Who has he positioned you to influence? And that's all Jesus is doing right now. Jesus is literally calls his first disciples and starts walking through their hometowns. He calls his disciples and starts walking where they walk. Show me the people you know. Show me your family. Show me the people you care about. Show me where you grew up. Show me where you learned to fish. You know, Jesus cares about the map of your heart that you call home. Now, that's an ambiguous statement here in Las Vegas. You might have different heart maps. You might have a heart map for Hawaii. You might have a heart map for the Philippines. You might have a heart map for somewhere in the Midwest. And here's what I know, and this is just a side note, that as Jesus calls you to himself and he grows you in this community, that those heart maps in some of your souls and your hearts right now, he's preparing you to go back there and take the gospel there. That one day we will send you out of this place back to your home. You'll be a church planter. You'll be on a church planting team. You'll be a missionary. And you'll be called to reach that place, and we'll be your sending church. Why? Because Jesus cares about our heart. Jesus cares about our homes. Jesus cares about the people we care about. So they're just walking around the city. They're hitting up the hometown, focusing on people that they already knew. Now Philip found Nathanael, verse 45. And he said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." It's almost like there's a break there. Like, so we found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote, and you'll never believe who it is. That's emphasis given by Joseph, right? You'll never believe who it is. It's Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph. And then Nathanael has the perfect, any sarcastic people in the room? Like, stop looking at your spouse. You just love, just like you have the spiritual gift of sarcasm, right? Like, I think Nathanael had the spiritual gift of sarcasm. And so he says this, like Philip finds him, and he's like, "We found the one that Moses and the law of the prophets wrote about." And he said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Like, what good happens there? What good happens in Nazareth, that little podunk town, right? Like, there's nothing good that happens there. Some random city. Like, you're saying the Savior of the world is Jesus from Nazareth, son of Joseph. Like, and that's actually an appropriate level of sarcasm from an Israelite man of that day. Verse 46 goes on to say this. Nathanael said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip's response is so beautiful. He said to him, "Come and see." Come and see. I want you to notice he doesn't make an argument, he extends an invitation. What Philip could have said, he could have said, "Oh, no, what you need to understand is that the birth records of Jesus actually put him in Bethlehem. What you need to understand is the genealogy of Joseph actually connect him with David. What you need to understand is here's how these pieces work together." And he's going to provide this logical explanation based on their history and the set forth facts that are indeed true to prove that Jesus is this one that Moses and the law and the prophets come about. And he's like, no, bro, you just need to come on over here and see. You just need to come and see. He had the arguments. He had the right answers. But Nathanael didn't care about the right answers. He didn't care about the information. He didn't care if he was right. I think Nathanael was lonely and he needed answers in his life. But more than he needed answers in his life, he needed friends by his side. He needed people that cared about him. He needed people that wanted to be close to him. He doesn't make an argument, he extends an invitation. And where did he learn this? Where did he see this first happen? It was when he didn't actually see it happen to him first. It was exactly how the person who helped call him Andrew was called by Jesus. Verse 39 from last week. Verse 39. Jesus said to them, when they asked, "Where are we going to live if we follow you?" "Come and you'll see." He didn't say, "Oh no, I'm the Son of God. I have everything that you'll ever need. I could actually turn these rocks into bread. Let me distribute. Let me go ahead and just display my power to you so that you will follow me and trust me." No, he didn't say that. He said, "Come, just be with me. Hang out with me. Come see where I live. Come walk with me. Come roll with me. Come be my friend." This is the culture that Jesus sets for discipleship. Is not explaining, is not listing, is not arguing. It's being. It's seeing. It's relational. Come and see. Come and see. That's what Jesus set a come and see culture when he was making disciples. And so when Philip looked at Nathanael, and Nathanael is like, "No, world good could come out of Nazareth." He's like, "You're going to have to see it to believe it." Because here's what I know. Many of us, you have to be with Jesus if you're ever going to believe in Jesus. If I can convince you to believe in Jesus, the next hard time will convince you that he's not active in your life. If I can talk you into it, somebody else can talk you out of it. And I think I could talk you into it. Somebody's like, "Try me." But I'm also not that good. Somebody right behind me is going to be better, and they're going to talk you right out of it. You know what you can't talk someone out of? Is an authentic, personal experience. If I hadn't been with Jesus, I would have given up on this a long time ago. If I didn't know Jesus personally in my life and feel his comfort by my side, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be here. I'd be seeking something else. But I'm not seeking to build anything for me. I'm seeking to create places where people can belong with Jesus so that they'll eventually believe in Jesus. Belonging, being, walking side by side. Sometimes you just gotta be there, right? Sometimes you just gotta be there. Last season, I've become a big Golden Knights fan, but I'm kind of bandwagon. I'm still getting used to it. I'm still figuring it out. And So last year during the playoffs, the Beyondos were over at our home, and we're watching the Knights play in Colorado. I think it was game 2 or 3, something like that. And the next game was going to be in Vegas if we won. So it was further in the series than that. I can't remember. But the next game was going to be in Vegas if we won, and it was going to be the first game back in T-Mobile at full capacity. Okay? And I had been to a hockey game, so I was like, man, these are really cool. These are really fun. But as Chris and I are watching this game together, and Lisa and Kristen are making fun of us at how geeked out we're getting, Chris is like, but you haven't been to a playoff game yet. He's like, and when you go to a playoff game, there's a different level of energy. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, we just got to go. And he starts looking up tickets, and we both look at Kristen and Lisa for approval, and they're like, fine, y'all go. So we buy the tickets right there, and the next night we're in T-Mobile, and the energy was electric, right? But me standing right here in the cafeteria at Green Valley High School, I cannot communicate to you the energy that was in T-Mobile Arena, right? I would fail to do so. So much so that I need to drink water. The energy was electric. It was absolutely extraordinary. The roof was coming off of the place. Literally. They're still repairing it. If you're going to ever believe in Jesus, you got to be with him. You got to spend time with him. Because here's, for most people, the question, do I belong here? Precedes the question, do I believe this? If you're wondering why there are people in your life that you can't convince that Jesus exists, it's because they're not convinced that you want them in the room. There are people in your life that you're like, man, if they would just believe in Jesus, so many of their problems would be solved, which may or may not be true. If they would just trust Jesus, man, it would all go away. May or may not be true. Do they know that they belong here? Do they trust that they would belong here? Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him. Excuse me. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said to him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there's no deceit. Notice that Nathanael is coming with Philip. This is why our invite cards say, come with us. That people shouldn't really be seeking Jesus on their own. People should be brought to Jesus. People should be brought into the presence of community. There is a bringing aspect to discipleship, to being a disciple. And Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit. And Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? How do you know me? Jesus answered. Philip, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Those are powerful 3 words. Before you ever got invited, I saw you. Nathanael felt known because Nathanael was noticed. He felt known because he was noticed. And I think there's miracles all around us. But my question to you this morning is, do we notice them? Do we notice our coworker who's in depression, who's in need of an invitation? Do we notice our spouse experiencing loneliness and they need our support, our friendship? Do we notice our neighbor who's grieving the loss of a loved one? Do we notice a family member who's having a crisis of faith and they don't need answers, they just need your presence? Do we notice? I think we're so scared that we're not going to have the right answers that we don't put ourselves in the right places. Because it's not really about having the right answers. It's not really about what we do. It's not really about us fixing the problems. It's about us being available. It's about us being present. It's about looking at someone in the eyes and saying, you belong here. So Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. There was amazement in what Jesus did to Nathanael, but he didn't even say all that much. Like, he's just like, at the end of the day, you're just like, well, hold up. All you did was you said you saw him. You knew he was an Israelite, and you kind of spoke something prophetic into his life, but like, it wasn't that amazing. And I think what Jesus did was he made him feel known. He said, you belong here. He didn't answer all the questions about why he was the Messiah. He didn't answer all those things that were rattling around in Nathanael's head. He didn't even address his doubt. And Nathanael still came to this place of belief because Nathanael belonged. He believed. And because he believed, he became a disciple of Jesus. And all Jesus had to say was, I see you. I see you. Jesus answered him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree. Do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. I don't know who needs to hear this morning, but if you are a child of God, if you've given your life to Jesus, if you are following Jesus, here is a promise that is true of you today. You will see greater things. You will. The best is still to come in your life and through your life. If you're a follower of Jesus, because here's how the language shifts in this verse. If we can do one more Greek exercise here today. Here's how the language shifts in this verse from saying a singular focus to Nathanael to saying, look, you just believe this. Here's what Jesus does in this room. He's talking to just Nathanael. And then he opens the circle. He's like, I just say this and you believe? And then he peels back. And the language shifts to a plural you. And he's like, you'll see greater things than these. This is a promise that he expands. He uses the moment with Nathanael to expand to his disciples and his disciples for all time to come until he comes back, that you are going to see greater stuff than this. Just wait. Greater things are still to come. Greater things are to come in your marriage. Greater things are to come in your friendships. Greater things are to come in your relationships, in your jobs, in your pursuits, in your dreams, in your desires. There's miracles, but do we notice them? Do we see them? Are we committed to being the person that is with Jesus? Or are we focused on just doing things for Jesus? Because these disciples, the greatest invitation that they had to extend to anyone wasn't presents, wasn't money, it wasn't a fancy miracle. It was the presence of Jesus. You're just going to have to come and see it to believe it. You're going to have to come and see it to experience it. So as the band comes up, we get ready to close. I want to offer us 2 points of application. Number one, you might be in this place this morning and you might feel like, man, I don't know what the presence of Jesus is like. I don't know what it's like to follow him. And so the invitation to you this morning is come and see. Come and see. Put yourself in a deeper level of relationship in our church. Join a small group. Get around people. Continue to engage in what we're doing. One of the things that we are praying and asking God for is how do we take the next level step to be engaged in our community? Because we are Jesus' hands, we are Jesus' feet. How do we take that next level step as you see those kind of opportunities roll out? Come be a part of them. See what the body of Christ is like. You might just come and see at membership today. You're like, I don't know, membership, that word just kind of scares me. And that's okay. I promise, it's not a trap. There's not going to be like some big moment at membership where everybody like has to sign, and if you don't sign something, then you feel like there is something to sign. I won't like lie, but like there's not some big pressured moment where you're going to feel left out if you don't. Come and see. Come and see. Because I trust that if you're with Jesus, He's going to change your life. He's going to change your life. Here's the second point of application that I have for us. Is ask yourself the question, who in your life needs a come and see invitation? Come and see. Jesus' disciples were bringers. And there's people, it's not just about inviting people to church. Okay? But bringing them around God's people. Bringing them around God's Word. Letting them experience what it's like to worship. What it's like when people are singing together. There is something, if that wasn't important, we wouldn't do it. Like, we wouldn't even do it. And there's some people in your life that need to be a part of this. That need to experience this community. That are living in the captivity of their own sin and oppression in their life. And they need the freedom that is offered only in the community and the presence of Jesus. And so who in your life needs a come and see invitation? Somebody in your life does. The disciples, the first places that Jesus walked with His disciples were in their hometowns, in their streets, in their neighborhoods. If He was walking around your neighborhood, your place of work, around your friends, who would He give you a nudge to and say, hey, tell them to come and see. Tell them to come and see. Pray with me. We'll close and worship. Jesus, we trust You. We trust You for salvation. We trust You for greater things. Jesus, we trust You with our yes today. So I ask that right now would be just a come and see moment for our church. That we would be able to see how beautiful You are and how close You've come.